So the TR-8's installed. It's probably got some default factory settings because you haven't changed any of the system setup, and it probably will work adequately for what you want. However, if you want to sort of make the most out of the unit, you probably need to change some of the system setups. And what I found is that there are a number of different settings across a number of different releases, so getting all this information in one place is just a bit of a pain. So in order to get it into system setup mode, first thing you do is you need to switch the unit off. You need to press the PTN key, and then you need to switch the unit back on. And you know you're in system setup mode because the start button is flashing. The first 7 pads currently are lit up, with the rest being unlit, and the unit displays which MIDI channel it is in the display here. So let's start with the MIDI setup. The first thing you may need to change is the MIDI channel. It defaults at channel 10, which is represented by C10. You can turn this off by twiddling the tempo knob all the way down to the off position, and it displays off in the display. You can pick any channel through 16, or you can set it to Omni On, which obviously means it will receive on every channel. I'm going to put mine back to channel 10. So the next thing you might want to set up on the unit is what is your master clock source. And you do that through pad 1, and basically what pad 1 does is it tells the unit whether to use an external source or an internal source. The way this works is when pad 1 is lit up as it is at the moment, it will look for a clock source on either the USB or the MIDI coming into the unit, and it will use that as the default source for the unit to time against. If you turn that off, the unit will look at its internal clock source and ignore any clock source on the USB and the MIDI. So the unit comes with 2 MIDI ports. One is a in, one is an out. And they act as normal MIDI ports would, with the in receiving signals from other devices and the out transmitting the data from this device to something else. Now, because there's no THRU on this unit, the way you actually get the data from the in to go out the out is by using pad 2, which is this one. So basically, when pad 2 is lit, the data that comes in on the MIDI in is then routed straight to the out, and it becomes a THRU. If you have that off, then no data on the MIDI in will be transmitted to the MIDI out, and therefore effectively your daisy chain stops. The next piece of MIDI functionality you might want to have a look at is whether you want the unit to receive start-stop messages. This is done through pad 6. I normally have mine in off mode, so that means it will receive both MIDI data, start-stop messages and clock data. If you switch it on, it will only receive clock data, so start-stop messages from other pieces of equipment are completely ignored. So now we move on to the scatter function. By default, the way this works is that you hit the on button and it will introduce the scatter for as long as you hold that button down, which is all well and good, but it means that one of your hands is sort of kept busy holding the button down. In, I think it was version 10 of the firmware, they released the ability to latch the scatter for the remainder of the pattern, and you do that using pad 5. When pad 5 is not illuminated like it is now, that means the latch is on. So you hit this and it will then introduce the scatter for the remainder of the pattern. If you illuminate pad 5, it becomes the instantaneous. Press the button, it will introduce the scatter for as long as the button is held. So the next thing you might want to look at is the gains coming off the masters of the unit. Now they have something called a boost mode, which is controlled off pad 3. If it's not lit, then the boost is not enabled. If it is lit, then the boost is enabled. So if you intend to daisy chain the unit from an audio perspective, say for example you've got a TB3 like I saw in many of the early demos before I bought the kit, or you've got limited space on your mixing desk, then you need to tell the unit whether the sources that are coming in on those internal jacks at the back are stereo or mono. Now my understanding is that if you say it's a mono, it will basically take that signal and it will split it across the stereo outs. If you say it's a stereo feed, then the right goes to the right, the left goes to the left. And you do that with pad 4, which is this one here. If it's lit, which is the default, it should be in stereo. If it's unlit, it's mono. Again, this is another one based on how you've got the unit set up with your mixing desk, etc. But it's possible that you want to use the assignable outs on the unit to channel certain instruments of the kit out the assignable A or the assignable B. Easily done using the A and the B keys while you're in this mode. You press A, you select the instruments you'd like to send down the A channel, and you press B to select the instruments you want to send down the B channel, and then you obviously you select the instruments. When you come back to this main mode, what you'll notice is that the instruments I selected, which was the bass, the snare and the toms, are now not lit up. That means they're not going out the master mix, they're going out the assignable channels. If I want to put them back onto the master mix, I literally just press the buttons there to light them back up in this mode. Next we come on to screensaver. The default is after 5 minutes of inactivity the unit will start to flash in its screensaver mode. You can change that. I find 5 minutes is not enough. So you change that by hitting the tap key, and then you use the tempo knob to either switch it off or up or down the period of inactivity in minutes. I have mine set to 20. Now we move on to some kit functionality. So there's a couple of ways you can deal with effects when you're running the unit. You can either save the effects and the effect settings to each individual kit, or you can apply what are the common settings to any kit you select. I tend to use mine with the any kit select mode, but if you wanted to save the effect into the kit, at this point you'd hit the kit button in the system setup, and whatever you set in that kit in terms of the effect mode, next time you access that kit, they're the settings you will get. So the next part of the kit setup is, they call it program mode, I call it how hard you hit the instrument when you're programming. And to do that, what you do is you press the TR record button in this system setup mode, and what that means is that if you hit the key once you get hard, if you hit it twice you get a medium, if you hit it a third time you get soft, and then it recycles. If you don't have this set in system setup, what you have to do is you actually have to press a combination of keys while you're programming the pattern in to get the desired strength on the kit here. So once you've finished your system setup, in order to save whatever setup you've put into the unit, all you do then is you just press the start-stop key, it goes away, it thinks about it, and you're ready to rock and roll again.